is that something that, like, because I always think to myself that, like, American civilians have no concept of what that is. So they don't, being that they don't have any concept of, like, ordering a Danish and 2 blocks away is madness and strife. It doesn't give them perspective. So because they don't have the perspective, they just assume these feelings and this is what we should do, as opposed to, like, the pragmatic, like, time out, what is going on in our country? Does that question make sense?
Yeah,
Great question.
Yeah, and actually, I'd like to expound on that. This is really interesting because I spend most of my life overseas, right, in
Right.
about 100 countries. So I've got a good baseline of different countries, and like in the United States, you'll hear sirens all the time, right? I mean, how many times a day do you hear sirens, whether it's police or fire or ambulance? Over in Japan, I was just over in Okinawa. I was there for like 3 weeks. I only saw cops like twice. I was actually over there for more than a month in this last trip. But I was over in the first 3 weeks. I think I saw one cop car. You know what I mean? And I didn't hear. And every once in a while, I'd hear a siren. Like, I don't know, enough that it's so uncommon that you're like, hey, there's a siren. Whereas in America, it can be every hour. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And loud sirens in America, and Thailand similar. Like I've been here for about a week this time, right? And I haven't heard one siren. And, it's just like, and anyway. And so, when there would be deaths in the streets, if this was the United States, this stuff would be locked down for blocks, man. It'd be crime tape everywhere. It'd be like, get out, get away, get back, sir. With like, here it's totally different, right? It's totally, in most of the countries I go to, they're not as, let's say, ultra hyper vigilant to the point where it's insane. That's why I think the United States will be very easy to just super ultra lock down, because one IED goes off on a road, they're going to lock that thing down for 5 miles. It'll be, from this exit to that exit, everything will be locked down for a whole day or two. You know what I'm saying? And you've been in war. You know how many IEDs there are out there. It's a lot, right? I mean, and whether it's real or hoax IEDs or whatever, or ambushes or whatever, if when that would happen in Thailand, the stuff would happen and the stuff would instantly open right back up, right? And similar in Nepal, instantly open right back up. I know what's going to happen in America. It'll just be locked down. It'll be, checkpoints everywhere, like you're in Baghdad or something. Of course, you remember how locked down Baghdad was, one checkpoint. And for those who haven't been in war, by the way, one of the most dangerous things you'll ever do is pass through checkpoints. I mean, that can be as dangerous as, straight up getting into ambushes. You'll see, because the time is coming when there's going to be checkpoints across America. I highly advise you to avoid as many of those as possible, especially at nighttime.
So I guess that like feeds into like what's going on at the southern border and who's coming across. And I think that that's something that, like, a lot of Americans don't truly understand. They think it's like, give me your tired, your poor, yearning for freedom. Is that what's happening?
No, it's give me your gangsters, give me your jihadists. You know what I mean? This is straight up. I'm down in the Darien Gap all the time. It's an invasion. It's not migration. It's not a border crisis. There is no border and there's no crisis. It's a war. We're being invaded, right? These are invaders. Words are atomic structures of truth and lies. So we have to use the most accurate. Soldiers know about that, right? So the soldiers don't need a briefing. But a lot of the journalists I talk with, they don't get it. They're like, no, we have to call them illegal immigrants or, because, well, it'll turn people off if we don't. I'm like, well, okay, so you're going to start by lying that it's illegal immigration, right?
Right.
I mean, so in other words, nothing else you say can be trusted, right? I got even my friends, some of them are journalists. They'll send me articles that they write and they'll start talking about illegal immigrants. And I'm like, I'm not posting your link. It's that simple. If you can't even get those words right, I will not publish your links. I mean, because I can't trust anything else you say.
Either the basis of it is a lie.
Yeah, if you're going to make water, we need two hydrogens and one oxygen, right? If we use lithium and sodium, it's not going to be water, right?
Right.
So we can't make a cake out of lithium and sodium. When it says add water, we can't substitute H2O, for something else,
Right.
And so it's the same. If you're going to tell a story about what's happening, you have to use the accurate terms. And if you're not going to use what it really is, then you're just worthless. I mean, seriously, not only worthless, but part of the problem. In the Iraq War, I was the first one calling it civil war. I was calling it civil war since February maybe of 2005, and people are like, you can't call it a civil war. I'm like, it's a civil war. I mean, the Sunni and Shia are killing the shit out of each other, right?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but it's politically inexpedient. Like the people, I don't care. And the bottom line is you have to call it what it is, because one component of the Iraq War was a civil war. There were other parts that were not civil war. There were parts that were insurgency. There were parts that were other things. And there was criminality that was, huge amounts. But so there was multiple types of wars going on simultaneously and overlapping. Like, I don't know if there was any civil war in Anbar province. That was just insurgency, right? And also the business. They wanted to do business, and we were interrupting their business, right? But down over in Bakuba and that in Diyala province, there was actually civil war going on. There was civil war in Baghdad. There was no civil war, to my knowledge, down in Basra. There was a little bit of civil war going up in Mosul and a lot of insurgency, right? So it was a mixture, right? And so, but if you're a doctor, if you're an oncologist and your job is to treat cancer, and I can't call it cancer because it's going to make everybody here upset. Well, then what good are you as a doctor? You got to diagnose what it really is, so that people can, first of all, you have to have the skill to do it. And then secondly, so you have to know the difference between that's an insurgency and that's a civil war. Keep in mind, those things will go hand in hand. It's not like they're completely severable, but not to go into that. You guys get it. But the bottom line is if you're going to call it what it's not, I'm sorry, sir, you've got a terrible headache, but luckily you don't have cancer. Just go home. Meanwhile, you're like, well, I didn't want to tell him he has brain cancer, even though it could be treated. It's like and so that's the same with these types of wars. It's the same with the invasion. The people that are just calling it a border crisis, you're just a liar, or you're just such a poor analyst. Why would I read one more word that you say if you're calling it a border crisis? There's nothing else that in your article that I care to read, because you can't even get that right, And there's a lot of other people that I know that are on the border, and if I got a limited amount of time, right? As we all do, right?
Right.
So everything's about priorities, and I got lots of sources, and some call things what they are. So I'm going to devote my time to those sources who have, first of all, the analytical skills to call it what it is, and the courage to call it what it is. So that's where I spend my time. And just, you can't back down from that. And if people don't publish it, have a nice day, right? That's fine.
So what was it? What were the things that you saw? And you can interrupt me whenever you want, bro. Yeah. So for like the suburban housewife that lives in northeastern Pennsylvania, what were the things, like, what groups did you see?